The tabletop takeaway.
Game mechanics on display.
Three designers share the stage.
Pick a genre and we'll play.
The tabletop takeaway.
Welcome back to the Tabletop Takeaway. I'm Charlie McCarran,
I'm Trevor Miller-Hagel.
And I'm Ananda Gunratna.
and this is our bonus episode about co-op games.
Semi.
Semi-co-op.
Co-op
Yeah, very
games.
important. Yes, so we did this series. We played first Cosmic Encounter, then Galapagos, and then Nemesis. 3 very different games. And
Very different games.
yeah,
Holy cow.
different styles of semi-co-op. So I was thinking maybe we could start by just thinking about like what are other semi-co-op games we can even think of, and
Oof, I
other
have a few.
styles.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess I can get us started
sure.
off. So we've looked at a couple different styles of semi-co-op, right? So like Cosmic Encounter, it's, okay, everyone's for themselves, but you can team up at certain times and you can win together if you're both in the final encounter. And then Galapagos, it's, okay, well, we want everyone to win, but someone might have to get voted off because there's not enough resources. And then Nemesis, it's, okay, everyone has their own goals. These goals might sometimes align with each other, and then you can both win, but you're still in it for yourself. So one game that I think has a pretty interesting and unique semi-co-op mechanism is Oath. Because
I need to play that. Sorry.
yeah, so in Oath, one player is the Chancellor, who's like they're in charge, and other players are either outlaws or citizens. And if you're a citizen, you're kind of on the Chancellor's team, except you can't win together. So like usually in semi-co-op games you can win together.
Right.
In Oath you can still only win by yourself. But the interesting thing is how it incentivizes working together, which is that at the end of certain turns, the Chancellor rolls a die, literally just rolls a die. And if it's a certain number, which gets higher and higher as the end of the game approaches, so I think first it's you have to roll a 6 and then a 5 or a 6 and then like a 3. I don't remember exactly the numbers, but
Sure.
Then you just instantly win. So it's really interesting because like you're literally rolling a die to see if you win, assuming that the Chancellor has assuming that nobody else has met their victory condition. And if you're a citizen, you have to have fulfilled your victory condition if that die is rolled. So if the Chancellor victory condition die is, I think I'm remembering this right. If the die is rolled and the condition has been met, then you win. Otherwise, the Chancellor wins. If the Empire is currently achieving its objectives at that point.
Yeah.
I'm maybe butchering the explanation slightly.
Yeah,
but-
no, I've played it a couple times, and I think there's also like is the citizen the role that kind of goes along with the Chancellor?
Yeah. They command the Chancellor's forces and
Right.
are allied with them.
Yeah, so I really did like that nature of it, and this fact that the Chancellor can switch from game to game because it is a campaign style game.
Interesting.
So you play multiple rounds or multiple games of it, and yeah, it would have been fun to keep playing, but it like Nemesis is a pretty long game, so we didn't get as far.
Yeah. I mean, specifically what I find interesting about it is the probabilistic element, because only one person can win. So, if the victory was a deterministic thing, then you'd have the so-called allies sabotaging each other to prevent the other one from winning if they're currently meeting their objective. But because it's a roll of the die, you can say, okay, well, we're on the same team. My ally might not win this round if the die roll goes bad for them. So I guess I don't have to sabotage them because we're currently doing quite well. And if I don't sabotage them, the next round I'll be in a better position to achieve my goal. So adding that uncertainty lets the players work together without being certain that they're going to lose if their alliance is doing too well.
Yeah, giving that little sense of reward there is, I think, really good too. Like, you could do better. You could finish and win the game, or they may win the game. But if there's a low chance of that happening, then you can build, like, having that choice is just a nice little, that's awesome. I like that.
talking about this made me remember my favorite semi-co-op mechanic of all, which comes from something you wouldn't expect. It's from Clask, the game where you have these like balls that you're trying to kick around on. There's like a magnet thing that you have under the table. It's like...
I've only ever seen it. I don't think I've actually played it.
It's kind of like air hockey for 4 players. Well, there's 2-player mode, but I like 4-player mode because the way the scoring works is you have a set number of lives, I think 5 lives, and anytime the ball goes in your goal, you lose a life. And then the game ends, though, when someone is out of lives, and the person who has the highest amount of lives wins. And that could be a tie. So the fun thing is these alliances change as you get going. So say in a 4-player game, maybe 2 people are tied at the top and 2 people are near death. And the 2 people at the top are like, yeah, let's kill one of them so that we can both win. But the people at the bottom now are like just trying to help each other out because they don't want the game to end. They want to knock down the people on top.
Because then they'll have more allies to take out the other leader.
Yeah, it's genius. And I always use that example when people are trying to figure out how to do semi-co-op in their games. And I'm like, try this method. Well, but I haven't tried it myself yet.
Well, there's not a clear, like, actual mechanic that is saying this makes it semi-co-op.
No.
It is just providing the opportunity for it to exist.
Yeah.
Which is more like Cosmic Encounter.
I mean, it seems like the only thing you really need is to make sure that more than one person... Well, not the only thing, but in much the same way that allowing people to share points from completed projects lets them work together, letting people share the victory lets them work together as allies.
Yeah. Maybe there should be more games that just have shared... Or, like, you can tie.
Yeah.
And few enough points that ties are often going to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
I will say that there is like a portion of gamers that they want to have that solid win.
Yeah.
They would have done what I did in Cosmic Encounter at the beginning of this series.
Yeah.
Where it's like, no, I don't want anyone to win with me. I'm just going to sneak it in here and just win.
And they can still do that. I mean, if you're tied in Clask, you can just take out the other person and then, you know.
Oh, whoops, my bad.
Yeah.
Yep. But like King of the Hill mechanics in general, by doing that, you're putting a target on your back.
Right. So it's a bit more challenging, but that's what you wanted, right? You wanted the glory of a solo win. So it's going to take a little bit more. It's
going to cost you.
Yeah.
What about single loser games? I don't...
Like Cockroach Poker.
Yeah, I haven't played many, or I can't really think of any.
I feel weird with single loser games. No, I don't know if I've played many other than Cockroach Poker, which I've only played once, I think. But like whenever you have just one person who didn't win, like we had with Galapagos, that's not the rule of the game. That's one loser. But when we had one loser, it kind of felt like, sorry, man, we gotta kill you because you messed up on the finding wood in the forest.
It feels kind of bad.
Which is just a random thing you had very little control over, if any.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know. The semi-co-ops are interesting though because it gives you a feeling that you don't get in other games.
Right.
Like I felt pretty bad about just killing you instantly with one card.
I mean, you didn't have to do that.
I didn't.
But I also egged you on to do it. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
You said I have an option to do something here.
I could have slowly tried to kill you by moving
and I think that's actually more interesting from just the player perspective because I thought it was going to make it more challenging for me and not end the game.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it was
the rulebook's line is it will make the game slightly more challenging for the players, like instant death.
Oh yeah, murdered. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I think I do have an example of a game that I don't think does the right thing. So in the classic Dune, and Dune is not what I'm talking about, but in the classic game Dune, which is fantastic, players can form official alliances whenever a sandworm comes up, and then they're both on the same team. You know, they can share their powers with each other. which I think I mentioned this in the Cosmic Encounter,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
fragment of power. That's so it's really cool. And as a team, they need more strongholds to win the game because you have to control a certain number of strongholds to win in Dune. And then at the end of the game, they win together. And in the remake of Dune, Rex, Final Days of an Empire, they have the same mechanic, but they've updated it with a twist. And I do not like this twist, which is each player can start the game with a betrayal card, which has some condition on it. And at the end of the game, if you've won as part of a team and you've met your betrayal condition, you can reveal the card and win by yourself.
Oh my god.
And I do not think this is the right way to do semi-co-op because it's like you're stabbing them in the back for no...
After the fact.
After the game is over.
Yeah, no one has any more agency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for absolutely no good reason because, like, you're winning either way. It's just you're saying, okay, you are not winning even though you thought you were.
Right.
And I think that is something that you should not do.
So that's actually going to get me to my question I have for you two. If you were going to design a traitor game based off of something like Betrayal at House on the Hill, how would you turn that into a semi-co-op instead? Would you...
Or Betrayal at House on the Hill specifically.
Something
because-
along those lines where you have a reveal of a traitor partway through the game.
And in that game, you know who the... You find out who the traitor is.
No,
in
that's-
Betrayal, you do.
Well,
in Betrayal.
in
But it's not a
Betrayal,
traitor game.
In Betrayal, it is randomly determined
Right.
who the traitor is. Assuming there is a traitor, I think there are probably some scenarios where there
It-
isn't.
But usually...
Yeah.
Well, no, the traitor goes off in the other room, reads the book.
Right, after they
but
become it.
There's different scenarios though. I actually I don't know all the scenarios. Maybe there's some without a traitor, but
Yeah.
most of them have a traitor, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I will say I'm not a fan of Betrayal at House on the Hill specifically because I feel like such a huge random event is not foreshadowed at all.
Right.
Like
To me, the first part of the game does feel a little silly. Like, just go around open rooms,
Yeah.
find stuff.
it's
Then
pointless.
You might discard all that and become the
So,
1v many.
changing that into a semi-cooperative experience.
That
Feels good.
I think the first thing you need is foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing.
And that can just be, people, well, first of all, people need motivations from the beginning.
Yeah.
I think I guess if there's, I guess my takeaway from a lot of this is it's good to give people abilities that suggest particular allegiance as opposed to saying, okay, you're on this team. I guess in a semi-co-op game, you wouldn't say you're on this team, but
Right.
but like so like
Galapagos
right.
we talked about. It's not the rules, not in the rules necessarily. Like, oh, this person is the traitor because they do
Right.
this traitor card. It's I have a gun.
Yeah, so
Rather than something helpful,
Yes.
maybe I need to use this instead of.
exactly. Yeah, so I think that would be one thing to look at first of all.
Yeah.
Is to start players off with different abilities and let them decide to betray based on what they have. So like maybe someone has the Necronomicon
Sure,
or something,
sure.
or they find the Necronomicon, and they don't have to become an evil necromancer, but like they have the ability to take control of the ghosts that are terrorizing everyone, right?
Sure.
And if they do, they become everyone's enemy, but like they don't have weapons to fight ghosts. All they have is the ability to take control of the ghosts. So what is the natural thing for them to do?
And then they also may get a new goal card when they do
Yeah.
that. It's like, now I just have to do this, and then I win.
Right.
Yeah.
So like
And-
don't
Yeah, and I think also you have to create a sense of threat from the other players that, if I don't do this, then maybe this other player will take control and kill us.
Right.
So like if you create a natural human tension where if instead of like, oh, I'm going to turn evil, but it's like actually in movies, the evil person never thinks they're evil.
Right.
Right? They're just...
It's
you know.
justified preemptive self-defense.
Yep. And then-
Always.
yeah, I
Always.
think that would help the game group also feel better about like explaining why they're doing these things.
Well, and it
No,
may
I'm
have
just doing
people
that
go
as-
off together instead, just to keep an eye on each other, and
Yeah.
so you're not having as much craziness.
Right. Like you did in Nemesis to make sure I wasn't lying about where the ship was going.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that's really good. I think that's a really good idea. I really like the idea of having kind of a specific objective that you're all trying to do at the beginning. So you do have this like cohesive, we're trying to do this by either a certain time or a certain thing, just to have an objective you're doing, and then add in a twist that is. I haven't played all of the legacy version. Obviously, I've only played the first game.
Betrayal.
But,
same.
Yeah,
but I did like that first.
I did like the first game. It was it was a different experience for me than normal Betrayal.
Yeah,
but yeah, drive the betrayal with your abilities, not your goals.
Oh, sure.
People do what's easiest for them, and what's most likely to make them win, not what they've literally been told they need to do to win.
Sure. Yeah. In Cosmic Encounter, my objective was to get a certain number of planets, and I had a card that let me augment that. I was like, that's a lot easier to do, even though it's the same objective as everyone else. But if I just had that card in play, then it's easier for me, and I'm just going to do that. And it's going to be fine.
And that one's funny because it's essentially like gain a point.
Right.
But
and everyone lose a point.
Because you didn't, I think the other thing I would do is, I think it's helpful for people in proximity of each other to feel like they should work together. That's what I was feeling like in Nemesis. It's like, okay, we're in the same area. We probably should work together.
And you can trade items, I believe, as an action in that. But I don't think we even did that. But yeah, being able to support each other and actually...
Yeah, and I think that would feel better than like, oh, you're next to people, you probably should try to kill each other. Because maybe you can get this feeling of the alliances and like us versus them. Them could change, but...
Right.
And even, I've thought a lot about, I've done prototypes and want to incorporate this somehow, but having like victory shared among your neighbors physically at the table. So like
physical neighbors,
right side, left side,
right,
and you're sharing a thing like between two cities is the classic.
I was gonna say One Night Ultimate Alien introduces some of that.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, because you can win as the blob, where the three people to your right have to stay alive in order for you to win. You don't know what they are. You don't care. They have to stay alive.
Nice.
Or it'll be the left, or it'll be either side of you. I like the idea of it being the win condition, or like you share the victory with your neighbor if you do this. It's like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and the thing I haven't worked out yet that in a great way is like, I want to have these open discussion phases where you can work with your neighbor to your left and right, but it's still a slightly awkward, like, who do I talk to first, or,
Have you played Seven Wonders Architect?
No.
So it doesn't have any kind of actual diplomacy. It has you share cards with your right neighbor and your left neighbor, and you have a deck that's visible face up. And so you can choose to take your right card or your left card or a random card from the center. And it just kind of reminded me of that because you have kind of a relationship with the person to your neighbors, your physical neighbors, which you rarely have in games.
Right.
It's all board interaction or card interaction. So I really like that little physical aspect of it.
I'm actually surprised there aren't more. After having, I don't know what game started it, but
more like interactions with physical neighbors.
The neighbors, because it's a fun.
I mean, I do that a lot. I do that in Sprocket Forge. You can clear the pollution of your neighbors.
Oh yeah.
I think my main inspiration for that was Seven Wonders, because the thing I like about interacting specifically with your neighbors is that it scales really, really well, because you always have only two neighbors, no matter how many people are in the game. So you don't have to worry about different player counts affecting those dynamics.
That's a good point. Which is why Seven Wonders Architects works really well.
Yeah.
Because it goes up to seven players.
Yeah.
And you just have one neighbor and another neighbor. Yeah.
I had that prototype that Ananda's played of. I called it Rulers and Rebels back in the day, and you had boats between each of you that were getting shipped off to
I
the
remember
central
that
area, and you're drafting polyominoes and fitting them on the boat.
Oh, okay.
And you could decide which boat to put it on, and you put dice on the boat too. The mechanics were a little bit probably more complicated than it needed to be, but it did create some cool moments. That's awesome. I was trying to do... The thing I learned from that game is that it's kind of hard to not have I kept trying to not have player colors and like, oh, this is my zone on the main board. These are my pieces. Because once you put stuff on the main board, it's just kind of out there.
Sure.
But you have investments in the different city spots, kind of. And I tried to do that as sort of semi-co-op, like people could work together to build out these cities. But it just felt like a harder way to do that versus like if people just have their own colors invested out on the board.
Right.
It just feels naturally better. But, you know, I'm trying to push the boundary, I guess, and make it harder on myself.
Right.
As a designer.
This has nothing to do with what you're saying potentially, but I just imagined, you know, you're building out this space in the center that's colorless, right? It doesn't belong to anyone, but then you're building a tableau that calls on the things in the center. And so like, hey, now that we have this row in here or this many of this in here, I get to do this special card that lets me specifically do something. And then you don't have to worry about having player colors or anything.
Yeah.
It's just like,
it was kind of
cool.
that was kind of the idea.
I like that idea.
The idea was you had different dice color that you own that are
Okay.
related to the city colors.
Oh, I see.
And so you could look around and see like who was more invested in which city.
Sure.
So that part kind of worked, but maybe I would need even more dynamic difference between players in how much they cared about certain things. But yeah.
Awesome.
Any last thoughts on? I did feel like we should mention a couple games that Dead of Winter was one of the first. Because
other than Cosmic Encounter, which
Cosmic,
won a landslide, but
right. I guess Dead of Winter.
Cosmic Encounters are the first in a lot of things. Though,
yeah. I guess Dead of Winter, I think maybe was when the term semi-co-op started getting used more.
Probably.
And that one is kind of like you're surviving against zombies in winter. But everyone has their own secret goal that they need to achieve too. And it definitely feels like an older implementation of the idea. And you kind of feel like you're at odds with the co-op nature by trying for your own goal.
Which I could understand being the trade-off, especially with a zombie apocalypse style game. Because, like, do you put your needs ahead of the group's is often a conversation in the whole genre, right? So I could see that being appealing, but, like, yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's a hard world to design. Well, not world, but, you know, genre to design in.
Yeah.
With it still feeling good for everyone.
Yeah.
Or at least a good experience, maybe not good for you personally, but, like, as long as you felt like you contributed or you felt like you did a good job of doing what you were doing.
Yeah.
That's the key, and it's just really hard to get that balance in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one other method that I don't think works awesome, but I'll just mention it because people probably think of this when they're thinking about designing a semi-co-op game, and I don't think it works well, is Marvel Legendary's method where it's like cooperative, except one person can get the most points.
Right.
By like defeating the most villains.
BGDL was just talking about this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. I hate to end it on like down note of I don't think these things work, but you know, it's just kind of like maybe a word of warning to designers who think, oh, this will work.
Wait, so one person gets the most points? Doesn't that mean that they're the winner then?
It does mean they're the winner.
So then,
so it's not a co-op.
It's not even semi-co-op.
But the whole group loses if you don't defeat the villain.
You can lose all together, or one of you will win.
Yeah.
Which is a fascinating thing.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. It looked like someone did a poll on BGDL, and this is gonna age with this podcast really well. But basically saying, what would you prefer? Everyone win, one person win, but then also the groups have a lesser victory. Or everyone loses and wins together. Like, what do you prefer? And almost everyone so far, at least, had said that everyone wins or everyone loses. Like, you don't have one person who did really good above everyone else, but everyone else had a partial victory.
So that's interesting because, like, winning and losing are, of course, social conventions.
Right.
And I've seen games try to play around with that. Like, for example, Fury of Dracula, I think it was maybe the second edition, maybe the first edition. It had this notion that there were different levels of victory.
Yeah.
Like, if you do really well, then this is a great victory, or
Huzzah!
or else it's a minor victory, or and I don't know. Personally, I don't feel like I personally don't feel like I accept that notion that there's different levels of
Tiers
victory.
of victory,
Like
okay.
you won this much, or
But what about in a fully co-op game?
sure in fully
Where it's-
yes. Oh,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
like
Yes,
high score.
Right. In fully co-op games, I'm fine with that. But the notion in a competitive game where, I won this much and you won a little bit less, that doesn't make sense to me. Either you win together or just one of you wins. Like,
Yeah.
if you win more, then... I'm sorry.
But what about a points game where you still feel like I came in first, second, third, fourth?
Sure, I guess.
I'm playing devil's advocate a little. 'Cause
Yeah.
I also think of there's a winner or not, but
Well, like there's also the playful Galaxy Trucker thing where everyone wins, but one person wins slightly more.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
tough.
Well, maybe it's more tough if it's like you've been working towards your goal and you think you met your goal, but your goal wasn't good enough, so you're not qualifying
Yeah.
for the highest win.
I think people, I mean, maybe this is just me, but I think people are going to interpret it as either you win or you lose
Yeah.
in general.
Yeah.
And if you say, I win more and you win less, then you're just going to feel
But
like...
they definitely lost.
Yeah.
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 It goes back to, I'm sure we talked about this in some episode, but maybe in the tactical combat game where it's like you either die or in chess your piece dies or you live,
Yeah.
versus like other games where you chip away at their health.
Oh, sure.
I don't know why
Right.
that's coming to mind, but it's kind of a similar thing where it's
Like the
all or
intruders
nothing.
as they're chipping away their health.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like old school Mario, you fell off the ledge, you're dead.
Yeah.
It gives players a feeling of even more achievement if
Yeah.
you do win.
I-
So, yeah.
Yeah, I do feel like it's hard to get people to buy into different gradations of victory.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, we could keep going down this rabbit hole, but yeah,
Does Nemesis kind of have that, though? I'm going to bring it back around. Because you can escape with your life, but maybe not have achieved your goal.
That, I suppose, but I think you just say you lost then.
You lost, but didn't die.
Oh,
but
also,
you had a good story happen.
But you had a good story.
I guess. Yeah.
also, have you guys done your takeaways?
Oh.
Oh, do we do those in this? Yes, we do. Well, semi-cooperative. What I usually answer is, what would I make a game with this? If you got one, Trevor.
I will start talking, and we're going to see what ride we go down. So for semi-co-ops, I've actually tried designing them in the past. Not a lot, not extensively. It was maybe a little bit too challenging just on my own in a vacuum. I didn't try to mimic anything or anything like that. But I think for me, the biggest takeaway is being able to create a system that allows for people to work together or not. And so the table talk is actually where you get the alliances or the help. But then just having an open system where it is possible for multiple people to win and not restricting it like, oh, you got most points, you win, or you did this, you win. Like, okay, now we have to have a condition where multiple winning individuals is possible and kind of build it out from there. I'm normally not an endpoint designer. I don't design the objective, the final end state, which gets me in a lot of trouble with a lot of my designs. I realize more and more every time I do it. But yeah, I think I would want to start with that condition and then build from there. Do it kind of my entire design process backwards.
Yeah.
Because that would actually make it, I don't know if easier is the right word, but clearer what the final thing would be. Because just like Cosmic Encounter, you have 5 foreign colonies and you win. Good job. That can happen with multiple people because people can be your ally, and that's great. On Galapagos, you're trying to just be on the boat to leave. with enough food and water to survive. And the more people that you can get on there, the better, and the less likely you'll be killed in the process. So you're kind of encouraged to like get more resources and make sure everything's good. But there's not really like, you don't have that personal victory like in Nemesis. So yeah, I think I'd aim towards that endpoint and see what I can do with that, and maybe keep it simple. Have a simple condition, and then have a lot of variety with how you approach it, just like Cosmic Encounter has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you're talking, you're getting my brain turning here too. I think
That's how I live.
Yeah. I think when I've tried semi-co-op things, I have been too clever about trying to make like these semi-obscure ways to win together. So it's not as clear like, oh, you could all just tie and get all your goals at the same time, even though that is what I intended. But I think that would be my takeaway. Figure out what's the clear goal, like class. Like, hey, when the game ends, whoever has the most of this thing will win,
Right.
and you can tie together. So I think that the tie aspects, if I could find a thematic thing that makes sense, that's cool. And survival is like a good one. Hey, we all survived, and yeah, that might be my next step to try.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ananda, for reminding us.
Yes, yeah.
Also, quick little asterisk. I said BGDL earlier and realized I just said an acronym without any reference to that. Board Game Design Lab is a podcast, and I was referencing their Facebook group.
Nice.
That's where a lot of conversations happen in the design space. So if you're not on there, you should get on there.
For
Because
sure.
a lot of people talk about game design all the time. All the time.
Yeah, that was like 50% of my posts I was seeing for a while.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
God, probably still.
So, yeah, let's wrap it up there. Our episodes have been kind of long in this series.
Yeah, we're getting a little verbose.
Yeah, but lots of good stuff to talk about. So, cool. See you next time for our next series on whatever topic we decide to pick.
Dun, dun, dun.
Hey, thanks for listening to The Tabletop Takeaway. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. So please tell your friends and visit our website at thetabletoptakeaway.com, where you can suggest games and mechanics for us to cover next on the show.